Major Zoe Washington stared at the dismissal letter in her hands. The paper shook slightly as she read the words again and again. After 12 weeks of hard training, countless hours in flight simulators, and giving up all her free time, she had been kicked out of the Air Force's top F-22 Raptor program. Insufficient aptitude for fifth-generation fighter aircraft, the letter said in cold, plain words. Zoe knew this was not true. She had done better than half the class in the simulators. Her test scores on battle tactics were always in the top quarter. But Colonel Frank Miller, who ran the program, had made his thoughts clear from the first day. He did not think women should fly fighter jets, and he especially did not think black women should. "This is not the end," she said quietly, folding the letter with care and putting it in her pocket. The bright Florida sun beat down as Zoe walked across the base at Tyndall Air Force Base. Other pilots and staff moved around her, some looking away when they saw her, others giving small nods of support. News traveled fast on a military base. By now, everyone knew that Major Washington had been kicked out of the program. Back in her room, Zoe packed her things in a neat, orderly way. Her roommate, Lieutenant Samantha Boyd, watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. "They are making a big mistake," Sam said after a long silence. "Everyone knows you should be in that program." Zoe nodded but did not look up. "The Air Force spent millions of dollars to train me. I have flown more than 2,000 hours in F-16 jets. I have flown in real combat. And they think I cannot handle the Raptor because of some made-up reasons?" Sam stepped into the room and sat on her own bed. "Colonel Miller has friends in high places. He has run this program for 6 years, and not one woman has ever made it through to the end." "Well," Zoe said, closing her bag with a zip, "there's always a first time for everything." Sam leaned forward. "What will you do now? Ask for a review? File a complaint?" Zoe shook her head. "Complaints get buried. Reviews take too long." She looked out the window at an F-22 taking off, its twin engines pushing it into the sky with amazing speed. "I need to find another way." That night, Zoe did not sleep much. She thought about her long road to this point. Growing up in Detroit, she had fallen in love with planes, watching them land at the nearby airport. Her father, a car factory worker, had saved up to buy her model planes and books about flying. Her mother, a school teacher, had pushed her to study hard in math and science. When Zoe said she wanted to join the Air Force, her parents had worried but supported her choice. Through college ROTC, pilot training, and her first posting flying cargo planes, Zoe had worked harder than anyone else. She had earned her way into fighter jets, proving herself again and again. And now this. Kicked out of the F-22 program not because she lacked skill, but because someone did not think she belonged. The next morning, Zoe put on her uniform for the last time at Tyndall. She had orders to report to Scott Air Force Base in Illinois in 1 week, where she would likely be pushed into a desk job or back to flying cargo planes. Her dream of flying the world's most advanced fighter jet seemed over. As she walked to the base commander's office for her final meeting, she passed the simulator building. Through the window, she could see the newest class of Raptor pilots, all men, mostly white, going through their morning briefing. Colonel Miller stood at the front of the room. He caught sight of Zoe through the window and gave her a small, satisfied smile before turning back to his class. Zoe felt heat rise in her face but kept walking. Now was not the time to show anger. Now was the time to plan. The base commander, Colonel Patricia Harris, was one of the few high-ranking women Zoe had met in her career. She had hoped for support from her, but Colonel Harris had signed off on her dismissal without question. "Major Washington," Colonel Harris said as Zoe entered her office. "Please, sit down." Zoe sat stiffly in the chair across from the large desk. "I want you to know that I reviewed your case carefully," Colonel Harris said, her face giving away nothing. Colonel Miller's recommendation was backed by the training data. "With all due respect, ma'am, the data does not tell the whole story," Zoe said. Colonel Harris sighed. "Major, you are not the first person to wash out of this program, and you won't be the last. The F-22 is the most advanced fighter in our fleet. Not everyone can handle it." I can handle it, Zoe said firmly. My simulator scores prove it. Simulator scores are just one part of the assessment, Colonel Harris replied. Colonel Miller reported issues with your decision-making under pressure and your ability to work in a team. Zoe almost laughed. She had won awards for her cool head in real combat situations. And as for teamwork, she had been voted most valuable team member in 3 of her last 4 postings. I see, was all she said. Colonel Harris studied her for a moment. Look, Washington, I know this is hard, but you have a bright future ahead of you. Your record is strong. This setback doesn't have to define your career. No, ma'am. It won't, Zoe agreed. After signing her final paperwork, Zoe left the office with a formal salute. Outside, she took a deep breath of the warm Florida air. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Captain Greg Nelson, an old friend from her F-16 days who now worked at the Pentagon. Heard the news. Don't give up. Call me when you can. Might have an idea. For the first time that day, Zoe felt a small spark of hope. She had allies. She had skills. Most of all, she had determination. She walked to her car. Another F-22 screamed overhead, climbing sharply into the blue sky. Zoe watched it until it was just a small dot. I will fly you, she promised the distant plane. Somehow, someday, I will fly you, and I will show them all what I can do. She got into her car and drove toward the base gate for the last time, her mind already working on what would come next. This was not a defeat, it was just the beginning of a new fight. 3 months passed since Zoe Washington left Tyndall Air Force Base. She now worked at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, where she had been given a job training new pilots on flight simulators. It was not what she wanted, but at least she was, still teaching people to fly. Every night after work, Zoe went to the gym. She ran on the treadmill, lifted weights, and did pull-ups until her arms shook. She kept her body strong and her mind sharp. She had not given up on her dream to fly the F-22 Raptor. On a cool autumn morning, Zoe received a phone call from Captain Greg Nelson at the Pentagon. Major Washington, he said, his voice low and quick. Remember that idea I mentioned? It's happening. General Elaine Carter wants to meet with you tomorrow at Andrews Air Force Base. Zoe's heart jumped. General Carter was one of the most powerful women in the Air Force. She had earned her stars flying combat missions in the First Gulf War, and now she worked directly with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What does she want with me? Zoe asked. I can't say much over the phone, Greg replied. But she knows about what happened at Tyndall. She's been asking questions. The next day, Zoe flew to Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, D.C. She wore her full-dress uniform and made sure every button and medal was perfectly placed. First impressions mattered, especially with someone like General Carter. The general's office was on the top floor of a plane building. Inside, the walls were lined with photos of aircraft and framed certificates. General Carter stood when Zoe entered, a tall woman with short gray hair and a strong handshake. Major Washington, she said, thank you for coming on such short notice. It's an honor, ma'am, Zoe replied, standing at attention until the general waved her to a chair. General Carter sat across from her, a thick folder on the desk between them. Zoe could see her own name on the tab. Your record is very good, Major, General Carter said, opening the folder. Distinguished service in Iraq and Afghanistan. Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Top scores in your F-16 training class. She looked up. So what exactly happened at Tyndall? Zoe chose her words with care. I was told that my skills were not good enough for 5th-generation fighter aircraft, ma'am. And do you believe that? No, ma'am, I know I can fly that jet. General Carter nodded slowly. Colonel Frank Miller has run the F-22 program for 6 years. In that time, he has trained some excellent pilots. But not one woman has ever passed his course, and only 2 black men. She closed the folder. That strikes me as very strange, given the talent we have in our ranks. The general stood and walked to the window, looking out at the airfield where planes were taking off and landing. I've been hearing concerns about Miller's selection process for some time, she continued. But no one has been willing to challenge him directly. He has friends in high places and his program has a perfect safety record. Zoe waited, sensing there was more. There's an air show at Langley Air Force Base next month, General Carter said, turning back to face her. The Secretary of Defense will be there, along with key members of Congress from the Armed Services Committee. Colonel Miller will be showing off the F-22's abilities. General Carter returned to her desk and sat down. I'm assigning you as the backup pilot. Zoe's eyes widened. Backup pilot, ma'am? That's right. If anything happens and Miller can't fly, you'll be in that cockpit. With all due respect, General, Colonel Miller would never allow me to. He won't have a choice, General Carter cut in. I outrank him, and this comes directly from my office. She leaned forward. Listen carefully, Major. This isn't just about you. This is about making sure the Air Force uses all its talent properly. We can't afford to waste good pilots because of old prejudices. Zoe sat very straight in her chair. I understand, ma'am. Good. Because starting tomorrow, you'll be at Langley, training in their F-22 simulator. You'll have 4 weeks to prepare. 4 weeks, Zoe repeated. Most pilots got months of training before touching an F-22. Is that a problem, Major? No, ma'am. I can do it. General Carter smiled for the first time. I know you can. Captain Nelson speaks very highly of your abilities. Her face grew serious again. But let me be clear. If you get this chance, you have to be perfect. One mistake, and Miller's supporters will use it to prove they were right about you all along. I won't make any mistakes, Zoe promised. There's one more thing you should know, General Carter added. Colonel Miller won't be happy about this arrangement. He'll try to make things difficult for you. Are you prepared for that? Zoe thought about all she had already faced in her career. The doubtful looks, the whispered comments, the extra work she had to do to prove herself. Yes, ma'am. I'm prepared. The general stood, ending the meeting. Then I'll see you at Langley. Major, don't let me down. 2 days later, Zoe arrived at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. She was given a small room in the visiting officers' quarters and a security pass for the simulator building. As expected, her reception was cold. Most of the pilots and instructors were loyal to Colonel Miller. They nodded stiffly when introduced, but offered no welcome. The simulator technician, an older man named Bill Jones, showed her to the F-22 simulator. You have 2 hours each morning 0500 to 0700 before the regular session start, he explained. And 2 hours each evening after 2000, the hardest training hours when most people would be tired. Zoe had expected nothing less. Thank you, she said simply. I've been running this simulator for 12 years, Bill added. Seen all kinds of pilots come through. Some good, some not so good. He looked at her with kind eyes. Just do your best, Major. That's all anyone can ask. For the next few days, Zoe lived in the simulator. The F-22 was indeed unlike anything she had flown before. It was faster, more responsive, and had systems that made it nearly invisible to radar. She crashed many times in those first sessions, struggling to master the jet's unique handling. One evening, as she was leaving the simulator building, she nearly walked into Captain Alan Shepard, one of the instructors from the Tyndall program. He looked as surprised to see her as she was to see him. Major Washington, he said. I heard you were on base. Just temporary duty, Captain. He glanced at the simulator bay. Getting some practice time? Something like that. Shepard looked around to make sure no one was listening. Look, for what it's worth, most of us thought you should have stayed in the program. Your scores were good, but not good enough, apparently. That wasn't... He stopped. Miller has certain ideas about who should fly the Raptor. It's not about... skill? Zoe nodded. I appreciate your honesty. If you need any help with your simulator sessions, I'd appreciate that very much, Zoe said, recognizing he was taking a risk by offering. But maybe we should keep it unofficial. Captain Shepard smiled. I've got free time most evenings. We could go over some of the finer points of handling the jet. Thank you, Zoe said, feeling hope grow stronger inside her. Maybe this crazy plan could work after all. As she walked back to her quarters that night, Zoe looked up at the stars shining over the airfield. Somewhere out there, her parents were watching over her. She could almost hear her father's voice. "Don't ever let anyone tell you what you can't do." "I won't, Dad," she whispered to the night sky. "I promise." For the next 2 weeks, Zoe lived and breathed the F-22 Raptor. Every morning, she woke at 4:30 a.m., did 50 push-ups to clear her mind, and was in the simulator by 5 a.m. sharp. In the evenings, after most of the base had gone home, she returned for her second session. Between simulator times, she studied the F-22 flight manual until she knew every page by heart. Captain Shepard proved to be a valuable ally. 3 nights a week, he would join her evening sessions, sharing tips and advice that weren't in any manual. The key to the Raptor, he explained during one session, is understanding that it's designed to be unstable. That's what makes it so agile. Zoe gripped the simulator controls, feeling the artificial feedback as she guided the virtual jet through a tight turn. Most planes fight to stay level. This one almost wants to roll. Exactly. Shepard nodded. And there's a slight delay in the fly-by-wire system at high alpha that you need to account for. Watch. He took the controls and demonstrated a complex maneuver, pushing the simulated jet to the edge of its performance envelope, then recovering with small, precise movements. "I see it now," Zoe said, studying his technique. "The computer tries to smooth out your inputs, but that creates a lag when you're at extreme angles." "You're catching on faster than most," Shepard said with approval. "Now try it yourself." By the end of the second week, Zoe could handle the simulated F-22 through all its basic maneuvers. She had practiced takeoffs, landings, combat scenarios, and emergency procedures until they became second nature. But the airshow demonstration would require more than basic skills. It would demand perfection. "You need to learn the demo routine," Shepard told her one night. "Miller has been flying the same sequence for 2 years. I have the briefing notes from the last show." He handed her a folder with detailed diagrams and timing marks. "Memorize this. If you get your chance, this is what they'll expect you to fly." Zoe studied the complex sequence of maneuvers. It included high-speed passes, tight turns, the signature Cobra maneuver that showed off the Raptor's thrust vectoring capabilities, and ended with a precision landing. Each move had to be performed at exact speeds and altitudes for maximum visual impact and safety. "This is helpful," she said, "but Miller adds his own touches that aren't in the notes." Shepard smiled. "That's why I brought this." He pulled out a small flash drive. Video of his last 3 demonstrations, shot from the ground in the cockpit. Zoe looked up in surprise. "How did you get this?" "Let's just say not everyone at Tyndall agrees with how Miller runs things," Shepard replied. "Some of us think the Air Force is wasting talent." The third week was the hardest. Colonel Miller arrived at Langley to begin his own preparations for the air show. The first time Zoe saw him in the hallway outside the simulator building, his face darkened with anger. "Washington," he said coldly. "I heard you were here. General Carter's little project, I assume." "Just doing my job, sir," Zoe replied, keeping her voice even. Miller stepped closer. "Let me make something clear. You will never fly my demonstration. I don't care what strings Carter pulled. I have not missed a show in 6 years, and I'm not about to start now." "Of course, sir." "I'm only the backup," Zoe said calmly, though her heart was pounding. "And you'll remain the backup," Miller said. He looked her up and down. "You know, there's a reason women don't fly the Raptor. The G-forces, the stress, the split-second decisions. It's not just about skill. It's about physical capability." Zoe had heard this argument before. It was the same one used against women, flying combat missions until women proved they could do it just as well as men. "With respect, sir, I've pulled 9 Gs in an F-16 without a problem. My combat record speaks for itself." Miller snorted. "Combat in an F-16 is nothing compared to what the Raptor can do. You'll never find out, of course, but trust me on that." He walked away, leaving Zoe standing alone in the hallway. She took a deep breath, pushing down her anger. Getting emotional wouldn't help. Only preparation would. That evening, Captain Shepard found her working even harder in the simulator. "I saw Miller today," he said. He looked upset. "We had a chat," Zoe replied, eyes fixed on the instrument panel as she practiced an engine-out emergency landing. He's worried, you know, Shepard said. Word is getting around that your sim scores are excellent. Some of the maintenance crew have been talking. Zoe brought the virtual jet to a perfect stop on the runway centerline. Let them talk. The next day, Zoe received a message to report to the base commander's office. Her stomach tightened. Had Miller found a way to remove her from the program? Colonel Susan Rivera, the Langley base commander, was waiting for her. General Carter was also there, sitting in a chair by the desk. Major Washington, Colonel Rivera said. Please, have a seat. Zoe sat stiffly, glancing between the two senior officers. I've been reviewing your simulator sessions, Rivera continued. Your progress is impressive. Thank you, ma'am. General Carter leaned forward. Colonel Miller has filed a formal complaint about your presence here. He claims you are disruptive to his preparation, and that having an inexperienced backup pilot creates a safety risk. Zoe's heart sank. I understand. We've denied his complaint, Rivera said firmly. Zoe looked up in surprise. Major, the air show is in 9 days, General Carter said. Miller is doing everything he can to get you removed, which tells me he sees you as a threat. Keep doing what you're doing. Yes, ma'am, Zoe replied, relief washing through her. There is one more thing, Colonel Rivera added. The day after tomorrow, we've scheduled you for an actual flight in the T-38 trainer. It's not the Raptor, but it will get you back in the air and help you adjust to the G-forces again. After that, General Carter said, if all goes well, you'll get one flight in the F-22. A basic checkout, nothing fancy, just to make sure you can handle the real thing. Zoe tried to keep her face calm, but inside she was buzzing with excitement. A real flight in the Raptor. It was more than she had hoped for. Thank you both, she said. I won't let you down. 2 days later, Zoe climbed into the cockpit of a T-38 Talon supersonic trainer. The jet was small and nimble, nothing like the powerful Raptor, but it felt wonderful to be back in a real aircraft again. She flew for an hour, pushing the jet through various maneuvers to get her body readjusted to the physical demands of high-performance flight. When she landed, her flight suit was soaked with sweat, but she felt more alive than she had in months. Captain Shepard was waiting when she climbed down from the jet. How did it feel? He asked. Zoe grinned, unable to hide her joy. Like coming home. Good, he said, because tomorrow morning at 0700 you're scheduled for your F-22 checkout. 1 hour in the actual jet. Zoe's smile faded. Tomorrow? Miller will try to stop it. Miller left an hour ago for Washington. Some emergency budget meeting at the Pentagon. He won't be back until late tomorrow. Zoe looked at Shepard with new understanding. General Carter's doing? Shepard shrugged. I don't ask questions, I just follow orders. He smiled. Get some rest, Major. Tomorrow you get to fly the best fighter jet in the world. That night, Zoe barely slept. Her mind kept running through procedures and checklists. When her alarm went off at 5 a.m., she was already awake, staring at the ceiling. Today was the day she would finally fly the F-22 Raptor. If only for an hour, she would prove that she belonged in that cockpit. The morning sun was just starting to rise as Zoe walked across the flight line. The F-22 Raptor sat on the tarmac, its dark gray shape looking both beautiful and dangerous in the early light. A crew chief stood nearby, clipboard in hand. Major, Washington? He asked as she approached. That's right, Zoe said, unable to take her eyes off the fighter jet. I'm Chief Martinez. I'll be handling your pre-flight today. He looked her over. First time in the Raptor? Yes, Zoe replied. But not my last, if I have anything to say about it. Chief Martinez grinned. That's the spirit, ma'am. Let's get you suited up. In the equipment room, Zoe put on her G-suit, which would help her body handle the extreme forces of high-speed flight. Next came the helmet with its special oxygen mask and communication system. By the time she was fully dressed, she felt like a space traveler preparing for launch. Captain, Shepard met her outside. All set? Ready as I'll ever be, Zoe said, trying to stay calm. Remember, this is just a basic checkout flight, Shepard reminded her. Keep it simple. Get a feel for how the jet handles. Don't try any fancy maneuvers today. Zoe nodded. Standard flight envelope only. I understand. They walked together to the waiting jet. Zoe climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit with Chief Martinez's help. The seat felt tight but comfortable, like it was made for her body. All around her were screens and controls, more complex than any aircraft she had flown before. Communications check, came a voice through her helmet. Loud and clear, Zoe replied. Major Washington, this is Colonel Rivera in the tower. I'll be monitoring your flight today. Understood, Colonel, Zoe said, surprised that the base commander herself was overseeing this flight. You're cleared. For a 1-hour checkout. Basic handling only, no advanced maneuvers. Stay within 50 miles of the base. Any questions? No, ma'am, all clear. Good luck, Major. We'll be watching. Zoe ran through the pre-flight checklist with careful attention. Every switch, every system had to be verified. The F-22's twin engines came to life with a powerful rumble that she could feel through her body. Tower, Raptor 04 is ready to taxi, she said into her mic. Raptor 04, you are cleared to taxi to runway 27. Zoe eased the jet forward, feeling its power even at slow speed. The Raptor rolled to the runway where she did one final check of all systems. Raptor 04, you are cleared for takeoff, the tower said. Roger that. Raptor 04 taking off. Zoe pushed the throttles forward, and the F-22 responded with incredible speed. In seconds, she was racing down the runway at over 100 miles per hour. At the right moment, she pulled back on the stick, and the Raptor leaped into the air with an eagerness that took her breath away. Wheels up, climbing to 10,000 feet, she reported, watching the ground fall away below her. The jet climbed at a steep angle that would have been impossible for most aircraft. In less than a minute, she was passing through 10,000 feet, the world spreading out beneath her like a map. Level at 15,000 feet, Zoe said as she brought the jet to its assigned altitude. Now came the part she had been waiting for. Time to see what this jet could really do. First, she tried some gentle turns, getting a feel for the controls. The Raptor responded to the lightest touch almost like it could read her mind. Next, she increased the bank angle, putting the jet through tighter turns. The G-forces pushed her into her seat, but her training held firm. This is amazing, she whispered to herself. How's it handling, Major? Shepard's voice came through her headset. Like a dream, Zoe replied. Even better than the simulator. Try some speed changes. Get a feel for how it behaves at different power settings. Zoe spent the next 20 minutes putting the Raptor through various basic maneuvers. She tested slow flight, high-speed runs, and different turning rates. With each passing minute, her confidence grew. The jet might be the most advanced fighter in the world, but it was still an aircraft, and Zoe knew how to fly. 30 minutes, remaining in your checkout, the tower reminded her. Zoe acknowledged and decided to try something a bit more challenging. She executed a perfect roll, spinning the jet 360 degrees while maintaining her altitude. Nice roll, Major, Shepard commented. Your control is solid. Encouraged, Zoe tried a split S maneuver, rolling the jet upside down and then pulling through in a half loop to reverse direction. The G-forces hit hard, but she handled them with ease. Washington, this is Colonel Rivera. You were told no advanced maneuvers. Sorry, ma'am, Zoe replied. Got a bit carried away. Understood, just remember you're not cleared for demonstration flying. Zoe brought the jet back to level flight, feeling slightly embarrassed. She had let her excitement get the better of her judgment. For the remaining time, she practiced more basic handling, including several touch-and-go landings where she would land the jet and immediately take off again. Each time, her technique improved. Finally, it was time to return to base. Zoe lined up for her final approach, following all procedures precisely. The runway grew larger in her view as she descended. With gentle hands, she brought the mighty fighter down for a perfect landing, smooth as silk. As she taxied back to the hangar, Zoe could not stop smiling. She had done it. She had flown the F-22 Raptor. Chief Martinez was waiting as she climbed down from the cockpit. Nice flying, Major, he said with genuine respect. Thanks, Chief. She's everything I dreamed she would be. Captain Shepard approached, his face serious. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Colonel Miller is back early. He's furious about your flight." Zoe's joy dimmed a little, but she refused to let Miller ruin this moment. "Let him be angry. I just flew the best fighter jet in the world, and no one can take that away from me." They walked to the debriefing room, where Colonel Rivera was waiting, with several other officers. To Zoe's surprise, General Carter was also there on a video screen. "Major Washington," General Carter said. "How was your flight?" "Outstanding, ma'am. The aircraft performed exactly as expected." Colonel Rivera nodded. "Your handling was impressive for a first flight. The tower controllers commented on your smooth technique." Before anyone could say more, the door burst open and Colonel Miller stormed in. His face was red with anger. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. "Who authorized this flight?" "I did," Colonel Rivera said calmly. "As base commander, that's my prerogative." "This woman was kicked out of my program for a reason," Miller snapped. "She has no business in an F-22. "I've reviewed her flight data," Rivera replied. "Major Washington handled the aircraft with skill and precision." Miller turned to the video screen. "General Carter, this is completely inappropriate. The air show is in 1 week. I can't have unqualified pilots jeopardizing my aircraft." "Colonel Miller," General Carter said, her voice firm, "Major Washington is fully qualified as your backup. Today's flight confirms that." "This is ridiculous," Miller fumed. 1 hour in the jet doesn't make her qualified. The demonstration routine takes months to master. "Which is why you'll continue as the primary pilot," Carter said. "Major Washington is only the backup, as we discussed." Miller glared at Zoe. "This is all you're doing, isn't it? You couldn't cut it in the proper program, so you found a back door." Zoe stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Sir, all I want is a fair chance to prove what I can do." "You'll never fly my demonstration," Miller said. "And after the air show, I'll make sure you never sit in an F-22 again." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, General Carter spoke. "Well, Major Washington, it seems you've made quite an impression. Keep preparing. The air show is in 7 days and anything can happen." The day of the air show dawned bright and clear. Zoe woke early and stood at her window looking out at the cloudless blue sky. Perfect flying weather. She felt a mix of excitement and disappointment. Today was the big day, but Colonel Miller would be the one flying the demonstration, not her. For the past week, Zoe had continued her simulator training, practicing the full demonstration routine over and over until she could fly it perfectly. Captain Shepard had worked with her every evening, fine-tuning her technique. "You never know what might happen," he had said. "Be ready." Now, as she put on her flight suit, Zoe wondered if all that preparation had been for nothing. Miller had made it very clear that he would not miss this show. Still, she had her orders. She was the backup pilot, and she would be ready. By mid-morning, the airfield was packed with spectators. Thousands of people lined the viewing areas, eager to see the display of American air power. In the VIP section sat members of Congress, high-ranking military officers, and the Secretary of Defense himself. Zoe reported to the briefing room where the airshow participants were going over last-minute details. Colonel Miller stood at the front, looking confident in his flight suit with patches showing his many accomplishments. He barely glanced at Zoe when she entered. "All pilots, check your weather data and performance calculations," Miller said. "Stick to your assigned altitudes and timing markers. This needs to be perfect." After the briefing, Zoe followed the other pilots outside. The airshow had already started, with older aircraft doing flybys and aerobatic displays. The F-22 demonstration would be the final act, the main event everyone was waiting for. "Major Washington," a voice called. She turned to see General Carter approaching with Colonel Rivera. Colonel," Zoe said, saluting. "At ease," General Carter said. "Are you prepared in case you need to fly today?" "Yes, ma'am. I've memorized the entire routine." General Carter nodded. "Good. Colonel Miller seems very confident, but it's always wise to have a solid backup." They watched as Miller walked toward the flight line, stopping to chat with several VIPs along the way. He was in his element, the star of the show. "He's quite the showman," Colonel Rivera observed. "Indeed," General Carter said. "But this isn't about showmanship. It's about demonstrating the capabilities of our finest aircraft." Zoe stood with the other pilots, watching the air show progress. One by one, different planes took to the sky, showing off their abilities. The crowd applauded and cheered with each impressive maneuver. Finally, it was time for the F-22 demonstration. Colonel Miller walked to the jet, helmet in hand, stopping for photographers to take his picture. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, telling the crowd about Miller's impressive record and the amazing capabilities of the Raptor. Just as Miller was about to climb into the cockpit, a staff car raced up to the flight line. A young officer jumped out and ran to Colonel Rivera, speaking urgently in her ear. Rivera nodded and quickly walked over to Miller. Zoe couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Miller's face change from confusion to anger. He gestured forcefully, shaking his head. Rivera stood firm, pointing back toward the staff car. After a heated exchange, Miller finally handed his helmet to a crew member and walked away from the jet. General Carter appeared at Zoe's side. "Major Washington, get your helmet, you're flying the demonstration." Zoe's heart jumped. What happened? The Secretary of Defense's office just received an urgent security complaint about Colonel Miller, Carter explained as they walked quickly to the jet. "Something about unauthorized communications with foreign nationals. It's probably nothing, but it has to be investigated immediately. Miller is being taken for questioning." Zoe suspected this was no coincidence, but she kept that, thought to herself. "How long do I have to prepare?" "No time at all. The crowd is waiting. You need to be airborne in 5 minutes." Chief Martinez met them at the aircraft. "Major Washington, we just got word. The jet is ready for you." Zoe put on her helmet, her mind racing. This was really happening. After all the obstacles, all the doubt, she was about to fly the F-22 demonstration in front of thousands of people. "You can do this," General Carter said, reading her expression. "You're more than ready." Zoe climbed into the cockpit, her movements quick but controlled. As she strapped in, she heard the announcer addressing the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a last-minute change to our program. Today's F-22 Raptor demonstration will be flown by Major Zoe Washington." A murmur went through the crowd. This was not the pilot they had expected to see. Zoe completed her pre-flight checks with practiced precision. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. This was what she had trained for. This was her chance to prove everyone wrong. "Tower, Raptor 04 is ready," she said into her mic. "Raptor 04, you are cleared for takeoff. Good luck, Major." Zoe pushed the throttles forward, and the F-22 roared down the runway. As she pulled back on the stick, the powerful jet leaped into the sky, climbing steeply. The demonstration had begun. For the next 12 minutes, Zoe put the Raptor through a series of breathtaking maneuvers. She performed high-speed passes just above the runway, the jet's engines thundering. She demonstrated the incredible agility of the fighter with tight turns that would have made most pilots black out from the G-forces. Then came the signature move, the Cobra. Zoe pulled the jet's nose up sharply until it was pointing almost straight up, while maintaining forward motion. The maneuver showed off the Raptor's thrust vectoring capability, something few aircraft in the world could do. The crowd gasped, in amazement. Throughout the routine, Zoe flew with perfect precision. Each move flowed into the next with graceful power. The jet responded to her touch as if they were one being, dancing in the sky. In the VIP stand, the Secretary of Defense turned to General Carter. "Who did you say that pilot was again?" "Major Zoe Washington, sir," Carter replied, unable to hide her pride. "One of our finest. Remarkable flying," the secretary said. "Absolutely remarkable." Finally, it was time for the landing. Zoe lined up the approach perfectly, bringing the mighty fighter down with gentle precision. As she taxied back to the apron, she could see the crowd on their feet, applauding wildly. When she climbed down from the cockpit and removed her helmet, cameras flashed and the applause grew even louder. People were pointing, talking excitedly. A black woman had just flown one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, and she had done it flawlessly. General Carter was waiting for her, along with Colonel Rivera and several awestruck congressional representatives. "Outstanding demonstration, Major," the general said, shaking her hand. The Secretary of Defense stepped forward. "Major Washington, that was the finest display of flying I've seen in 20 years. "Thank you, sir," Zoe replied, still catching her breath from the adrenaline. "General Carter tells me you were recently part of the F-22 training program?" the secretary asked. "Yes, sir," Zoe replied. "I wasn't able to complete it." "Well," the secretary said, looking pointedly at General Carter, "that seems like a situation we need to fix immediately." 3 months later, Zoe found herself back at Tyndall Air Force Base. This time she wasn't a student but an instructor, part of a new leadership team tasked with reforming the F-22 training program. Colonel Miller had been reassigned to a desk job at the Pentagon. The investigation into foreign communications had found nothing, of course, but by then the damage was done. His time running the Raptor program was over. Captain Shepard, now promoted to Major, worked alongside Zoe, helping to implement a more fair evaluation system. Together they were building a program that judged pilots on their actual skills, not on what they looked like. As Zoe watched a new class of pilots, more diverse than any before it, tackle the simulator challenges, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her personal victory had opened doors for others who would follow. A young female lieutenant approached, her expression earnest. "Major Washington, I just wanted to say thank you. I've wanted to fly fighter since I was a kid, and seeing you in that Raptor at Langley, it made me believe it was possible." Zoe smiled. "It's not just possible, Lieutenant. It's necessary. The Air Force needs the best pilots it can get, no matter what they look like." She glanced at the simulator where another female pilot was demonstrating impressive skills. "Now let's go make some history,"